What's it like to write a hit song? I don't know. I've always been really curious. So in today's episode, I am interviewing 3 friends of mine who have had that particular experience, and we are going to get into it.
He could only do music until 10 p.m. I'd gotten there at 8:30. So the sketch demo that we put together, you can sort of hear boom, 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 boom on the door at 10 o'clock. His neighbor going, it's time to stop playing music.
And then later I found out, because I toured with Kelly Clarkson, and later I found out that Kelly was instrumental in Reba cutting the song because she was there when Reba first heard it. And Narvel, who's now her ex-husband, but was her husband at the time, was like, no, 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 when Reba said yes to my stipulations.
Well, people started recognizing me as the dude in the Jewel video because that was when videos were really popular, and that was like the #1 video. And the song set a record for the longest running single on the Billboard Top 100.
Each of these folks are incredibly talented songwriters and performers and entertainers on their own, and they each have had the particular experience of writing a giant-ass chart-topping hit song.
Hi, I'm Steve Poltz, and I co-wrote the song You Were Meant for Me with Jewel.
I co-wrote We Belong that Pat Benatar recorded. It was written 37 years ago today.
And it was such a great collaborative effort, between all 3 of us. We were everybody just spitting out ideas, and it was fun. It was just really, really fun.
I forgot to get a clip of Cherie saying, hi, I'm Cherie, but Cherie wrote a song called Turn on the Radio that became a #1 country hit for Reba McEntire. Whew. I ask them each the same 3 questions, and their answers are fascinating and similar in some places and very different in others. But before I go any further, tell me, if you were talking to someone who had written a giant-ass hit song, what is one question you would ask them? Tell me in the comments below. One more thing before we dive in. I can't play any of the songs we're talking about in this video because of something called US copyright law, but I did link to them all in the playlist Amazing Songwriters that you can find in the description bar, and it features all the songwriters who have been guests here on my YouTube channel and these 3 specific songs by these songwriters, so I hope you'll check that out too. So the first question I asked everyone was, how did this song come together?
We had been involved in a band together. I was working a day job in advertising, and my day job was taking over to the point where I was starting to kind of flag in my dedication to the band.
This is my friend Dan Navarro. We met on the road, at some point became friends, and we make a point to get together for drinks or lunch or songwriting or whatever when we're in the same town. He's been such a good friend to me when I visited Los Angeles. He's been very hospitable, and I always try and return the favor when he's in Texas. So I have heard him play the song We Belong, which he wrote with Eric Lowen, and that was covered by Pat Benatar very famously, dozens of times in English and in Spanish, but I had never gotten to really pick his brain about how it all came together. So
if you're going to force me to choose, I don't have any choice but to choose my job and my family. And I quit, and I was bitter and angry and thinking, well, that's it. You're 31. You just quit your last band. It's over. And Eric and I stopped speaking. 2 months later, he called me out of the blue and said, hey, let's write a song, dude. And I had been a writer for years, written close to 100 songs at that point in time. He was more of a guitar player, singer. He had written 5 songs in his entire life, and he wants to write with me, and he's still in this band. And part of me's going, you're a chump if you say yes. All the things that bitterness and hubris and insecurity tell you. But some little voice in me said, just shut up and do it. So we got together, and in 90 minutes on that night, we wrote We Belong. We listened to it the next day and went, what did we just do? Now, we had no idea what would happen to it, but we knew that we had jumped a league overnight in an instant.
Up next, I knew I had to talk to Cherie Oakley, who I met in 2011 when we were both contestants on The Voice. She was the kindest, most humble person, and it really surprised me to hear from another contestant that at that time, while we were in this hotel together, she had a #1 song on the radio at that very moment. Reba McEntire had cut her song Turn on the Radio, and it was tearing it up, Billboard Country #1. This was really fun to talk to her about.
It was me and two other writers. I had just had the opportunity to be signed as an artist, and that unlocked some door or something creatively. I started thinking so differently as a songwriter because now I had this opportunity. It's like, wow, so I can actually write like what I want to say and how I want to say it and how I want to sing it. And what does that look like? And so we'd written just a few songs together, and then we wrote that, and it was so quick and it was so effortless and it was fun. It was just really, really fun. So I originally wrote it for me, and it wasn't to be pitched to anybody. But Reba's assistant wound up hearing it and asked for a copy of it. And so the interesting twist here, she heard it and she wanted it, but then found out that I was an artist who'd written it for myself. She's such a brilliant businesswoman. She's just very smart because she also knows her power. So she knows that if she picks up that phone and calls someone, like she can pretty much get what she wants by doing that. Because who's going to like be on the phone? No. Reba. And it was right after we played a show for CMA Fest, and the phone rang, and it was a blocked number, and it was Reba McEntire, and she asked for it, and I gave her 2 stipulations, which everyone thought I was kind of nuts to do, but I just felt like I had to. So my stipulations were, I'll give you the song on 2 conditions. I said, 1, I want to meet you because I've been a fan of Reba McEntire since I was a child. And then 2, I said, I need it in writing. You're going to make it a single.
Yes.
Because we all know
that gave me goosebumps. Oh, talk about knowing your power.
The next writer is one of my favorite people in the world to spend time with. Steve and I first connected when we were both playing at the Philly Folk Festival in 2014. We were sitting next to each other in the van and suddenly started talking and just went deep. We've been good friends ever since. And it was only after we had met a couple of times that I realized that he had been one of the co-writers of one of the biggest hit songs of my adolescence. And so it was especially fun to pick his brain about how it came together.
We were dating at the time, and we would write songs all the time. And so we went down to Mexico to go surfing. And it was a true co-write, the way co-writes happen. And we just sat down and start playing. I came up with the guitar part. It happened so naturally because it was just like, I just looked at her and I started going. And so that came up. And I just start scat singing words, and she would scat sing them back. You know how it is when you're dating somebody and you're both fearless about it because you've gotten to know each other pretty well? I mean, you don't even have to be dating them. You could be writing with anybody and just throw something out.
And he starts going to publishers, thinking, we can do something with this. Oh, you're crazy, man. Let's just have fun. I said, okay, you got that appointment. Whatever you do, don't put that sappy ballad on it. And he goes, exactly, whatever you say. And then he completely ignored me and gave it to a bunch of people who all turned it down, except for a guy named Tom Sturgis at EMI Music. The publishing guy calls us up after he'd already rejected it 3 months before and said, I have a crazy idea. Eric went and took the meeting because I was still working my day job. And a week later, we get a phone call that it's going to be Pat Benatar. It was the most surreal moment of my entire life. I just thought, what just happened? I kept working the job for another, for 6 months after the record came out. Entered the charts at number 40 and was a big hit at Christmas time, and it changed my life permanently.
But that one just happened to be one of these songs that ended up becoming a hit, which was amazing. I couldn't believe it. I would have never said you were meant for me and I was meant for you. It's just, she had great pop instincts is what I'm saying. Whereas I would purposely want to sabotage a song, and I didn't want something to be too corny. So that song wouldn't have existed without Jewel. So being a part of it was amazing because it was like the little song that could.
I just knew like my world was going to change because of my situation. Like I knew I was probably going to lose my deal, and I did. And I knew I would probably lose the tour I was on, and I did.
You lost those things because of the Reba song or because of something else?
Because it became a very sticky situation. I was out on the road with an artist who wanted to sign me, but at the same time, if I gave my song away, which I did, it was going to climb the charts the same time her song was climbing the charts. And now all of a sudden I'm competing with the person I'm working for. And it was this weird sort of enmeshed thing. So I knew we were going to walk down that road, and I knew it was going to be tough. And I had to know that it was going to pay off at the end of the day. And, you know, we all know that records just don't sell. She did agree. Thankfully, she agreed. And then she called me up a little bit later and asked me to sing the background vocals on it. Literally, the song, it all happened within just a matter of a few months between her asking for it, me giving it to her. She had recorded all of her stuff within a few weeks of that phone call. And then I was in the studio because they do the background vocals last before it goes to mix. And so I was in just a few weeks after that, and the song was out on the radio immediately.
Okay, now that we know how those songs were written, the next thing that I need to know is what was the experience like once the song was released into the world?
When it came out, and it's everywhere, and I mean everywhere, all over the radio, coming out of storefronts, it was #1 at MTV for 5 straight weeks. And I remember being at a party and it kept going up the charts. And I didn't tune in until like #9. So I thought, well, my God, it fell down to #11. And when it was #1 for a 5th straight week, it was mind-boggling and surreal.
We were collecting unemployment when our song went #1, because remember, we lost our job. We had nothing. It was a scary sort of gamble that I took by asking those things of her. But yeah, it takes about a year for your royalty checks to start coming in. I remember when it went #1 the end of December, beginning of January. It was really cold outside and we were struggling financially bad. And it was like, oh, we're #1. It felt so surreal because like we were broke. We're #1. Are we eating SpaghettiOs again?
It was weird because I would go out and people would go, hey, you're the dude from the Jewel video. And so I remember I shaved my head. I was out on the road with the Rugburns and I was freaking out.
The time that you and I were in Michigan, and I never got to tell you about it, but when you called me up, I was next to you, you started playing it, you were playing those chords, and it was like, it sounded like the exact same guitar tone, the exact same inflection on the finger picking pattern, and I had this really vivid memory of being 12 years old, I'd just gotten my first guitar, and I was sitting on the carpeted floor in my bedroom, listening to that song on my stereo, just playing the intro over and over again, trying to figure out how that guy played that guitar part. And so then, 20 something years later, I'm next to you on stage and you're playing it. And I was like, oh, yep, that's the part. That's how he does it. It was just, I felt it. Like, it was weird. It was really crazy.
I had friends saying you should keep your day job, buy a house cash. And I went, yeah, no, I'm not doing that. I had sent up a prayer at one point in time saying, if you cut me a break, I'll commit. And I got cut a break, so I did finally leave advertising and dove headfirst into being a pro writer and got a few cuts here and there and a lot of stop starts and a lot of stalls. A band was put together to capitalize on it. I wasn't in that either, which led to all the anger and bitterness that finally in 1987 led to Eric saying, that acoustic duo we've been talking about for the last 7 years, let's go do that. Let's just go do that for love. That was Loebe and Navarro, and we made our first record 2 years later at 37 and 38.
It was almost like it happened too fast for it to really sink in. But I remember the coolest thing was shopping in Target and hearing it and being like, I wrote that. And that's me. I'm singing background.
The last thing that I asked everyone was kind of the hardest question, I think, for some of them to answer. What was the impact of this song on your career or your life long term?
I was very naive. I hadn't tried to dive into like getting a publishing deal and getting into the writing circles of Nashville. I remember having this #1 and thinking that all these people were going to want to write with me, and they didn't. I was sort of like the uninvited person that was sitting at the popular people's table. It was just a very weird feeling. It was sort of like, who are you and where did you come from? I've grown so much from the experience. I've really had to sort of prove myself. So that's been an interesting thing to feel like, wow, so I had success and now I have to prove to you why I had success. Interesting. So it didn't really open up these massive doors like a lot of people thought it would. I actually had to almost work harder,
It's so funny because there was sheet music out with it, and my parents would keep every clipping. I got platinum records with my name on it, sent to my parents' house. My dad might still have them somewhere. It was pretty wild to be a part of it, and the money was cool, at the time. That was when people bought records. And I actually got a record deal on Mercury Records of my own, a solo record deal. And they were expecting me to blow up really huge, you know, like Duncan Sheik. And then after that came Jason Mraz, who really blew up, like jewel big. But mine never blew up big. I don't know that I was ever destined for stardom. Like, I don't know that that was in my fate or my destiny. I mean, we always want to do better than we're doing, but I'm pretty happy with the way things have turned out. I'll always want more, and I'll always swing for the fences, don't get me wrong. But I don't see that in the cards for me. But it's neat to know that as we get older, we can still do this and eke out our little piece of the pie. I cut out our piece of the pie, whatever.
The income part of it was big at first and started diminishing. The 10-year mark was 1994. Around 1988, it had dipped to below livable levels. And that was the same year that I coincidentally started singing in movies and singing in commercials and doing voice acting. Then it started turning around. And what started happening between 94 and 04 was a gradual rise into classic status that we never could have anticipated. Now, in the 15 years between 04 and now, you know, I can't even say this without feeling weird, but we wrote one of those. We didn't set out to do it. We're not being immodest when I say that, but it's everywhere, and people say they get married to it. It had its biggest year of licenses in the last 18 months ever. This is not anything you can predict. This is something that happens, and it, you know, I grant that it's a timeless message, but none of this was canny. Every bit of this was just, I just want to write this damn song so I can feel better. And we watch it happen. I think it does speak to staying dedicated and never quitting. You never know when that gem's going to come out. You know, I'm not trying to top it or equal it. I'm just trying to write something on a given day that I feel good about. It's still mind-boggling, and it's still a little weird. I can remember every minute of writing it, and every line and every word turn, and then I hear it, and yikes.
I couldn't have said it better myself. That is it for today's episode. I want to thank my guests, Dan Navarro, Cherie Oakley, and Steve Poltz, so much for being so generous with their time and their insights and their experience. I found it fascinating. I hope you did too. Make sure to check the description bar. I'm going to link to current work and websites for all of my guests today. Cherie, Dan, and Steve all have really cool going on. Cool projects going on. You should hear all about it. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you like these videos, subscribe, click the bell notification. It means that you will know when my next video comes out, and it means that I will get brownie points with YouTube. The other helpful thing you can do to help me keep making these videos is to consider joining me over on Patreon. It takes 3 minutes to sign up. It starts at $1 a month, gets you immediate access to over 5 albums worth of music, and it really makes it possible for me to create these videos. So thank you guys so much. Thanks again to my guests, and I will see you next time. Sorry, I didn't mean it. Sorry.